Merrill Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Regional Cities New South Wales have put housing on the agenda for the New South Wales state election. We're talking with the Chair, Matthew Dickerson. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks, Rod. Thanks for chatting to me about regional cities and all things important to regional cities.
Just to remind folks, which regional cities are involved in the organisation?
Well, this is Regional Cities New South Wales as an organisation. We've got 15 cities. The important part from the state government's perspective is that these 15 cities represent about 1 million people. So we've got a fair chunk of the population that we look after. And obviously we're talking about regional cities. So we're not talking about the Newcastles, the Wollongongs, obviously Sydney. We're talking about all those regional cities outside of those big metro areas.
And places that folks out in the far west of New South Wales go to get lots of services. Why have you got housing to be put on the agenda?
Well, one of the really positive things about regional cities at the moment, Rod, is that we get lots of people from metro areas that want to move out to regional areas. We saw a lot of that during the pandemic. We saw it already, the momentum was building before the pandemic, and the pandemic was a bit of a trigger for many people to start moving out to regional cities. But one of the problems we have is that there aren't enough houses for those people to live in, and we believe that the state government can help regional cities both be good for population growth in those regional cities, but also help the state government solve a problem in helping some of that population move out of metropolitan areas.
And living in rural areas, as we know, is generally a lot better for our health and that sort of thing. Get out and about and exercise. But we need more homes. We need more land to be released for homes. Yeah,
that's exactly right. And there's some of the components of what we're talking about here that we've put on the agenda for the election that's coming up. One of the things certainly is that we need to accelerate some of the infrastructure. And Dubbo has actually been successful recently in gaining a $9.23 million grant from the state government. But we're really talking about more than just Dubbo. We're talking about regional cities across the entire state. And if we can accelerate some of that infrastructure, put some of the sewage, some of the water pipes in the ground, get some of the roads built for some of these various housing developments and accelerate that, then we can get further housing or further housing developments being built and being built quicker. So that's certainly one aspect of it. Another aspect that actually isn't such a big issue in Dubbo, but is certainly an issue in some of the other regional cities, is Crown land. There are some areas where Crown land is not being used to help the community. It's not really utilised in an effective public way, but there's land there that's locked up that we see could be used for housing development. So that's an area certainly we'd like the state government to look at. And the third aspect that is really important is that we are struggling in councils across regional cities. We're really struggling to get enough planners at the moment. There's a lot of planning work being done by councils, a lot being done by the state government. There just aren't enough planners out there. So we think there's some help that we could get with Planning New South Wales, with the state government, to help some of that planning so that when builders put in development applications, we can get those DAs out the door quicker and make some of that building work happen a lot quicker.
And you're encouraging bipartisan support of the Regional Housing Task Force recommendations?
Absolutely right. This is something really that we're talking to both sides of government about. We've got an election platform. We have delivered that to both sides of government. And really, there is a task force that they put together that address some of these issues, and we're fully in favour of those issues in that task force being addressed. And I've already mentioned a couple of those issues already, Rod.
Yep, and regional housing, also the build-to-rent developments. We need a lot more of those.
Yeah, and that's another effective thing that was in the task force, was a part of the task force, that again we think could be an effective way to try and accelerate some of those buildings, some of those houses, so that people can move into them quicker, and then that build to rent and then buy means that you can actually get in straight away and then eventually end up owning those buildings. So there's a whole range of aspects there that we think will be very positive for regional capitals. And as you've correctly said, various locations that are outside those regional capitals in our area, the likes of the Burkes and the Warreners and the Walgetts, they can benefit from Dubbo growing and people moving to Dubbo just for some of those services. And we know there's a flow-on effect to some of those smaller areas around those regional capitals.
Yep, and regional councils are experiencing a skills shortage. How can that be addressed?
Well, there is certainly a great need for more people with skills to move to regional areas. One of the problems we hear from employers, and this includes councils, but for private employers as well, is that when they finally do convince someone from a metropolitan area to move, and that's getting easier and easier to do these days, then again they have this problem with housing rights. So they like the idea of moving, they start to look at somewhere to move, and then they just can't find a house, or they can't find somewhere to rent, somewhere to buy, and that is a major problem. So it's actually having a major impact on a whole range of areas that affect regional capitals.
Are either side of politics seeing what you're saying and going, yeah, we've got to do this?
We've certainly seen some action from the current government. Again, that accelerated infrastructure fund that I mentioned before, there's some money that's being handed out with that. So we're seeing some action from that. And I suppose we don't want to lose the momentum. We see some small parts taken and steps in the right direction, but we don't want either government, either side of government, to then sit back and rest on their laurels and say, we think we've solved that problem now. Because as far as we can see, Rod, people are going to want to keep moving out to regional areas. This is only going to keep building this momentum. We want somewhere for them to live when they move out here.
Yep, we need more houses. Thank you for your time today.
Always my pleasure, Rod.
Mero Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.